Hey, what is going on everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and in this video here, I'm going to be showing you all if you have a capable PS3 that has already been modified with PS3HEN, how you can essentially convert it and get a full jailbreak on that system by installing custom firmware. And really what we're doing here is just going through the full jailbreak process from start to finish, although there's going to be some familiarity since if you're watching this and you want to follow along, you probably have the familiarity of using a modified PS3 that already has PS3HEN installed on it, such as this one right here. Now, I do want to get this out of the way immediately here. If anybody is watching this excited and thinking, oh great, I can install custom firmware on my PS3 Super Slim, absolutely not. Unfortunately, this does not change anything. This is not any type of breakthrough method. This is just going to be the standard WebKit exploit style jailbreak that we have been using for several years. So that's all to say here. If you have a compatible system, this video will work for you, meaning that if you have a Phat system like this, congratulations, you can continue on. If you have a slim system, you might be able to continue on. There's several models of the PS3 Slim that work with custom firmware, such as the one that I'm using here. There's also going to be some that might be able to take custom firmware, which we will be able to check in a few minutes. And finally, the later revisions will not be able to take custom firmware at all. Very similar to the PS3 Super Slim, which cannot take custom firmware at all. So that's all to say, you have to make sure you have a compatible system in order to follow along with this. Now, why exactly am I making this video? I'm making this here because there's people who have PS3s that are perfectly capable of running custom firmware, but they only have PS3HEN on them. Maybe some people preferred PS3HEN for some time, maybe they want to try it out, maybe that was the only option while they were waiting for a full jailbreak or a custom firmware. However, that is to say, if you have an earlier run of the Slim or if you have a Phat system, you can install custom firmware on that just fine, and I'll be showing you how to do that here. It is also a nice benefit and upgrade because custom firmware allows you to have essentially full control of the system and even do things like convert it over to a developer or debug or DEX system. It also runs on cold boot, meaning that you do not have to enable HEN such as this here every single time you turn on the system and you want to run homebrew. You just turn on the system, you have custom firmware right there, and you're ready to go right off the bat. Generally, people, including myself, also believe that it is more stable when it comes to running games, applications, and much more. So that's all to say, if you have a custom firmware compatible system, I definitely recommend running custom firmware instead of PS3HEN. But PS3HEN is not a bad option, especially if all you have is a Slim that is incompatible or a Super Slim. Now that's all to say here, the method we're going to be using will be the PS3 Toolset from bgearville as well as the PS3 exploit team, otherwise known as the BG Toolset. It's going to make this nice and easy for us here, and they've done a fantastic job not only developing this but keeping it up to date, so it's going to be thankfully pretty simple and it will work well enough for what we're trying to do here. So with all of that out of the way, if you have a compatible system or you're wanting to check compatibility and you're ready to jump into the world of custom firmware, well, there's going to be a few things that we're going to need as prerequisites. First of all, you will need your PlayStation 3. This should be a PS3 that is up and running and working and should already have PS3HEN installed on here. You do not have to have PS3HEN installed because this can even work for a stock system. However, this video here is specifically aimed for PS3HEN users who are wanting to move over to a full custom firmware. Secondly, you're also going to need a USB flash drive because we're going to need to transfer some files to and from a computer. So you are also going to need a computer connected to the internet, and you will also have to make sure your PS3 right here will be connected to the internet. Now, there will be one thing to check and see that your PS3 is currently compatible and will work with the PS3 Toolset, and that's going to be checking the firmware version that you are on. You see right here, of course, we have HFW with PS3HEN, and what you can do is go to the Settings tab, go over to System Settings, go down to System Information, and inside of System Information, you need to look at the System Software version number that you are on. This one I'm currently performing this on is version 4.91. Now if you come over to the PS3 exploit team's website, you can check and see the recommended firmware here and see that CFW compatible is 4.91 OFW and the PS3 toolset does support up to 4.91. So as long as you are within this range, you're not higher, you can continue on with this video. If you have a higher firmware than what is listed here, you're going to have to wait for the PS3 toolset to be updated to support that firmware. And for anybody worried because this says OFW, don't worry, the PS3 toolset thankfully does support HFW as well, so we don't have to change the firmware before we start anything. However, back over at the PS3 with those prerequisites now covered and checked out, we are going to have to check our minimum firmware version and make sure that our PS3 is compatible with custom firmware. This is going to be a necessary step. So to do this here, there'll be a few steps you need to take. First of all, you are going to need to make sure your PS3 has been connected to the internet. Next up, you'll want to scroll back over to the settings option here, go into system settings, and one of the top settings that you should change here, if you haven't already, is automatic update. Make sure this is turned off because we're going to go through all this effort to install custom firmware and you do not want an automatic update to take that away from you on accident. The second thing we should change here is display what's new, turn that off. Next, we need to go down to the date and time settings. You'll need to set automatically to on, come up to the date and time, go down to set via internet. Now one thing to note here, if you try to set it via the internet and you get some kind of error such as this, make sure you are connected online, but even if you are connected online and you're getting that error, what you might just have to do is set this manually and use something such as your phone or your computer, something that has the date and time already set accurately on it, and try to set this to be as accurate as possible for the toolset to work successfully. It might also be worth mentioning here that if you have HEN already enabled, it might be worth just going in and rebooting your system real quick just to disable HEN, so that way we can continue on without HEN being enabled. Once your system has rebooted or you just make sure you have not enabled HEN, the last thing we're going to need to do here is make a new user profile and use that. So to do that, you'll need to come over to your users, create a new user, and this one we can call it whatever we want to, but typically I call this one JB for Jailbreak. You can hit OK, and now sign into your JB profile. Now once you're signed successfully into the JB profile, don't worry, once we're done at the end we can delete this here, but we're only using this for jailbreaking. So now we can go over to the internet browser and open it up, because we're now going to clean up our internet browser before we use this. So to do this, hit the triangle button, go up to Tools, go to Confirm Browser Close, and set this to off. Go back to Tools, go to Home Page, set it to Use Blank Page, then go down and hit OK. Go to Tools again. This time we're going to delete our cookies. We're going to delete the search history. We're going to delete the cache. And the last thing we'll need to delete is authentication information. And once that's all done, tap the circle button to close out of the browser. Now that we've confirmed the browser is nice and clean to work out of, tap the X button on the browser to reopen it. And now we're going to go to the PS3 toolset. To do this here, tap the Start button on your controller, delete everything here, and go to this specific website. It'll be right here, https://ps3toolset.com. And if you need to double check this, you can check the link down below in the description of this video and go to the toolset. Once you've dialed it in here, you can hit start or enter and wait for the page to load. Now do keep in mind, this website is going to take quite a bit of time to load up, so just sit here, wait, and be patient. Once it loads in, it's going to ask you if you want to run a plugin. You always want to say yes to running that plugin. And once the plugin is loaded, just wait a little bit longer for it to finish up. And here we go. Once everything has initialized here, you should get this message with the maintenance costs as well as several different methods in which you can donate to BG for the PS3 toolset. If you do get some use out of this, I always recommend giving a donation to the team. But once you're okay with this, hit OK. And now you can navigate up to System Manager. Tap the X button right here and wait for the System Manager to load in. It should give you this information here after a little bit, and this is what we are looking for. You want to look at CFW compatible PS3, and if you get a green check mark, congratulations, you can continue on with the rest of this video. Unfortunately, if you do not get a green check mark for your system, you cannot continue on with this video, and you're just going to have to stay on PS3HEN. However, do be a little bit thankful because for a while we could not do anything with those newer systems, so it is incredibly awesome that we do have PS3HEN available. But since my system is running PS3HEN, but it is a custom firmware compatible system, we're going to be continuing on for a full jailbreak here. So once you've been able to confirm this, you'll just want to tap the circle button to close out of the browser. And once it's closed, let's go ahead and move over to our PC for the next steps. For this, you're going to need a PC, and you're also going to need a USB flash drive to download and transfer over some files that we're going to need. The first thing we'll need here is Rufus, which you can come over here, scroll down a little bit, and download whichever version works for you. If you want to install it, the x64 version for 64-bit or the x86 version for 32-bit operating systems will work for you. Or if you just want to grab the portable one without having to install it on a 64-bit machine, you can do that. We will be performing a flash memory dump, and we are going to be verifying it. So in order to do this here, we are going to need the Pi PS3 checker. You can come to the GitHub link for the Pi PS3 tools down below in the description, click on Pi PS3 checker standalone package, and once you click on this button here to download it and save it somewhere you can easily find it. Since we're going to be installing custom firmware, we're going to need an actual firmware, and for this here, the one that is usually newest, latest, and greatest is going to be EvilNat. So I'm going to have this linked down below in the description, and there might be a newer one by the time you're watching this. However, you just need to find a custom firmware that works for your system here. And you can scroll down after you check out all the information, which there's a ton right here thanks to EvilNat doing a ton of work on this. However, you can come over here and you can pick whichever variant is going to work for you. Now, to keep it simple, we cannot touch either of the DEX firmwares, so you'll need CEX if you want a full retail firmware, or the PEX CEX variant if you'd like some of the development capabilities and even the capability to convert your system to a development or DEX system in the future. Now, you can get the standard version right here, or if you have a broken Blu-ray drive, you can get the no BD version. If you have a broken Bluetooth board, the no BT option. If you have both a broken Blu-ray drive and a broken Bluetooth board, you can get no BD, no BT. And finally, at your own risk here, because overclocking the PS3 has been a thing in the last few years, if you'd like to try overclocking. However, I'm not going to use any of that. I'm just going to get the PEX version here. So to download this, you just need to click here and go through the download process. Now, I've downloaded this before, but if you're going to be using Mega, you just need to click the download button and then save it somewhere you can easily find it. In order to extract the archives that we've downloaded, you can use something such as 7-zip if you're having difficulty extracting. It's easy enough to use, it's free, you just need to download whichever version works for your operating system and install it. And finally, we have to make sure that our firmware we download is going to have a good file checksum. So for that, I do recommend using your favorite MD5 checker. I'm going to have this linked in the description because it's online and it seems to work pretty well. With your USB drive plugged in, the first thing we'll need to do is open up Rufus. Double click this. You should get a prompt here in which you can say yes. If you want to allow it to check for updates, you can say yes. Now you need to find where your drive is hooked up. Mine is this 16GB flash drive I'm using. If you cannot find your drive, you can just go to Show Advanced Drive Properties and enable List USB hard drives. However, since my drive has been found, I'm not going to worry about that. For boot selection, you need to select non-bootable, and these are the two important options. You have to select MBR for partition scheme. If it is GPT, this will not work, but you have to select MBR for partition scheme, and then you have to make sure your file system is FAT32. If you see an option which is large FAT32, that's also okay, but it needs to be FAT32. As long as it's MBR and FAT32, the volume label does not matter. We can keep everything else default, and once you're ready to format this, you can click on Start. Now do keep in mind that when we format this, it is going to delete all the data that we care about from this USB drive. So as long as you have backed up all the data you care about and you're okay with formatting this, you can click on OK and give it a few seconds. It's now going to format the flash drive accordingly to work on the PS3, and once that's done, click on Close. Now you'll need to find your USB drive on your computer, right-click it, and eject it. And now take it over to your PS3. Once you're back over at your PS3, plug in your USB flash drive and make sure that it is showing up in any of the media columns such as photo, music, or video. If it is showing up here, congratulations, you have formatted it and set it up successfully. Now we can go back over to our internet browser and we're going to go back to the PS3 Toolset site. In order to do this here, hit the start button on your controller, delete all of this, and we're going to go to the exact same website we did before, which is https://ps3toolset.com. Hit start or enter, and while this is loading up, just to make this easier, you can now hit the select button on your controller and add this to your bookmarks so you can grab it easier later on. And just like before, it is going to take some time to load in properly, so just give it a few moments here. It is going to ask you to run the plugin. You always want to say yes to running the plugin. Now, once you get the maintenance costs page and your PS3 beeps at you, you can hit OK to continue on. Now come back over to the system manager like we did before and wait for this tool to load in. And here we go. Once we are here, you can now go down to flash memory, highlight the flash memory option, tap the X button, and there should only be one option that comes up, which is Save Flash Memory Backup. Tap X on here, and a new page will come up here asking where you want to save this to. You want to select your USB drive, which will say dev USB followed by some numbers. Tap the X button on your USB drive, and tap X here yet again to save. Now give it a few moments. Depending on how big your system flash is, whether it is a NAND or a NOR, it will be either a couple hundred megabytes or 16 megabytes. However big it is though, just wait for it to dump, and once it is dumped, you can hit close, and now you can close out of the browser yet again, and once it's closed, remove your USB drive and take it over to your PC. Over at the PC, the next thing we'll need is the Pi PS3 checker package. For this, you can right-click this and use something such as 7-zip to extract it to its own folder. Once it's been extracted, open up the Pi PS3 checker folder, and it's going to look like this. And this is going to be the important file that we're going to be using here, which will allow us to check our flash dump. For this, you can go to your USB drive, look for the dump.bin file, right-click, copy this out, go back to Pi PS3 checker, and paste it into Pi PS3 checker. Now all you need to do is grab this dump.bin file and drag and drop it onto drag and drop your dump here, .bat. Once you release it on here, you're going to get a command prompt window which will run through the script, and after a few seconds you should see this at the end showing the number of dangers and the number of warnings on your system flash. Now if you have any dangers, you do not want to continue just yet. If you have any warnings, typically one warning, depending on it is, might be okay, but multiple warnings, again, you don't want to continue just yet. One of the options here that might give a warning is the CoreOS region check, because it wants ROS 0 and ROS 1 to be matching. This is why if you have installed PS3HEN prior using one of my videos, I do recommend doing 2 installs so these values will be matching. If they are mismatched, for example, or if you get any other warnings or errors, what I do recommend is reinstalling your hybrid firmware or the HFW, which is required for PS3HEN. Reinstall it, go through the process of opening up PS3 Toolset, create a new flash memory dump, and then transfer back over to the PC and check that new dump. Again, this is what you should be looking for, 0 dangers and 0 warnings. Since this is all good, I'm going to hit the N key on here to exit out, and now at this point you're also going to want to back up your dump.bin. So typically what I do and what I recommend is creating a new folder, and in this folder you can put the serial number for your PS3 or the model number or whatever you want to do to denote this here. I'll call this like Slim PS3 Backup, for example. And now you want to transfer the dump.bin to that backup folder. And from here, you want to take this backup folder, make sure it is somewhere safe, back it up to cloud storage, make sure it's on a safe place on your PC, whatever you do, that way you know that you have a good flash backup, and just in case anything goes wrong with the next procedure, you can always reflash this to your system's flash storage using a hardware flasher. So now with that checked, we can close out of here and we can prepare our flash drive. The next thing we're going to need is the EvoNat custom firmware, or whichever custom firmware you're going to be using when you're watching this here. All you need to do is right-click your archive and extract it into its own folder. Once you have the firmware extracted here, it should look something like this, where you can check out the README and accompanying links if you want to. I believe here the links for this specific one is going to be the other firmwares that are available in this folder. The README for this one covers some of the newer capabilities that's been added to EvoNat at the time of recording this, and the MD5 is what we're going to need. You can open this up and save it for later. But this is what we're going to need here. Our file is going to be within PS3 update ps3updat.pup. And if your download is not set up exactly like this, you just need to look for the pup file, and you're going to have to copy it over. Since the structure is built out for this, we can just right click and copy the PS3 folder. Now go to our USB drive and paste it right here. Give it a few moments to copy over. Once it's done copying over, you want to check everything here, just to make sure it looks like what I have set up. So if you're on Windows, you need to go to View, Show, File Name Extensions. Once that's enabled, your firmware needs to go in a PS3 folder, all uppercase. It then needs to go into an update folder, which is all uppercase. And inside of here, the file must be called ps3updat.pup. It needs to look exactly like this. If it is not exactly like this, it will not be read. Now, the last thing to do here is check the file itself for the integrity of it. So this is where we need that MD5 checking site. Pull up your preferred MD5 checker and you can click on drop file here. From here, you don't want to navigate to the download itself. You want to go to your USB drive, the PS3 folder, the update folder, ps3updat.pup. Double click this and wait a few minutes for the hash to generate. Once you get a hash value here, you're going to want to grab your MD5 from the download that you grabbed. And as you can see, this is what we're getting right here. Now we're going to have to compare this manually, but when it comes to a MD5 hash, do keep in mind that it is not case sensitive. So for example, if you're concerned because there's an uppercase D and an uppercase B, you don't have to worry about that. You just need to make sure that the numbers and the letters are going to be matching in the same order. And once you can confirm that the file hash that we got is the same one as the expected one that came with the download, that means that you have been able to download this successfully. A few final notes for the firmware hash itself. If you do a hash check and it is incorrect, the first thing I'd recommend doing is delete the download here, re-download it, re-extract it, copy it back over to the USB drive again, and then check it. And if you're still not getting a successful file hash, make sure you are actually right-clicking and extracting the archive itself. And then inside of the extracted archive, make sure you're getting the update file and you're transferring that update file to the PS3 update folder. You do not want to check the archive. You need to check the update file itself. However, now that we know our USB drive is good, we can right-click, eject our USB drive, and take it over to the PS3 for the final steps. Over at your PS3, go to the internet browser, and we're going to do the exact same thing as before. Once the browser loads in, hit the select button this time around, and open up the PS3 toolset. And if all goes according to plan, this should hopefully be the last time you open up the PS3 toolset while you are jailbreaking your system. Now, as usual, whenever it asks you to run the plugin, always say yes to this and wait for everything else to load in. And once you get this page verifying everything is complete, you can hit OK. And just like before, we're going to come all the way up to System Manager, tap the X button, and wait for this to download. And once we are all good here, you want to come down to Flash Memory Patch, tap the X button on this, and go to Load Patch via HTTP. Highlight this, tap the X button, and wait. It's now going to download the necessary patch to your system and then verify the integrity of it to make sure that this patch is all good. And here we go. Once it's been verified, we can hit the Close button. And at this point now, we're going to be patching our system. So you'll come back over to Flash Memory Patch, hit the X button, go down to Apply Loaded Patch, tap the X button here, and now at this point you'll want to tread carefully because you need to be aware that this will be the point of no return. We're now going to be patching our system, and if we interrupt the system in any way, like if we try to disconnect it or try to forcefully close the browser, it can brick your system. So if you're ready to take that risk and you can be uninterrupted for a few minutes here, as long as you understand this, you can come over, hit yes, and tap the X button. Now what you want to do is physically put down your controller gently, do not touch the system, do not touch your controller, and let the patching process work. It is going to look like right here, for example, there's nothing happening, or it's hung up, or it is soft locked. Just trust the process right here. You're just going to want to give it time. Do also keep in mind, if you have a Phat system that is a NAND flash, it's going to take a few seconds to patch your system, so you should have been done at this point. However, if you have a NOR flash system, it's going to take a few minutes. It doesn't matter how long it takes, just let it do its thing. Sit here, wait, don't touch the controller, don't touch the system, let it finish. And as you can see at this point now, everything has completed. It took less than 2 minutes for my system to patch, but once it's done, you can hit the close button, and now you can tap the circle button to close out of the browser. And at this point, you now need to turn off your system and turn it back on. So you can hold down the PlayStation button, hit turn off system, say yes, and then turn your system back on. Now once your system boots up, nothing is going to be different on here, but it is time to install custom firmware to finally jailbreak your system. So make sure your USB drive has been connected like you can see right here. Navigate over to the settings column, go up to system update, go down to update via storage media, give it a few moments, and you should find the update file right here. Tap X, give it a few moments to load in, and after you accept the terms to the update itself, it's going to begin copying the update file from your USB drive to the internal system. After that, it's then going to reboot into system update mode. Just let it do its thing. Now when your system reboots into the system update page, you can press the PlayStation button on your controller and that should start the update process. And once you're at this screen, again, don't touch your controller, don't touch your system, and let it update. This will take a few minutes here. If it gets to a point where it gets partway through the update and then it jumps to 100% and reboots, that is totally normal. Again, just stay put for a few minutes, let it do its thing, and hopefully when it reboots, you should have custom firmware. Now when your system boots up, it should look a little bit different here, but one of the nice thing is you might be seeing some differences right off the bat here on the XMB. First of all, if you had Webman installed, you'll notice that Webman has already loaded in and you have access to Webman games. You also no longer have access to enable HEN because, well, there's nothing to enable anymore. You can now just simply turn on your console and it is in a modified state because we do have the package manager right here, so if you want to install any package files, you can do so right off the bat here without having to enable HEN. On top of that, many people have wondered if they go through this process, will they lose their data from PS3HEN? And the nice thing is, no, you're not going to. You can see here, I can go to my Webman games. I had a few PS3 games that I had backed up, so I can load in my House the Dead Overkill, and as you can see, the ISO is found, it is loaded in, it's able to mount without any issue. Another nice thing too is since we are back on the land of custom firmware, I have a few PS2 games that are on here, and the nice thing here is that on PS3HEN, they have to be encrypted to play. However, with custom firmware, you can just put the PS2 ISOs on a USB drive or on the internal drive and play them with no issue, as long as they are compatible. On top of that, any type of homebrew, applications, emulators, or re-signed games will work just fine, as if they had before. For example, here I have Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, which I had re-signed, and just to show you all, I can go ahead, fire this up. Now I end up giving this some time to boot up here, but as you can see, it was able to launch boot up and it is playable without any issues, thankfully. Like I said before, this is a game that I had actually re-signed prior on the console, but going from PS3HEN to custom firmware did not impact it, so it is working here just like any of the other homebrew or applications. Really the only thing you might need to look out for is if you have any homebrew on your system that needs to be updated for a higher firmware, you'll just have to go out, get the latest updates for those pieces of homebrew and install them, but aside from that, everything here should be just fine. Let's go ahead and exit out of this though. Now if you follow this video to the end here, congratulations, you're now in the land of custom firmware, and I'm sure you're a little bit relieved coming from PS3HEN now that you have custom firmware. However, keep in mind that many of these advancements here, including PS3HEN, were not possible without the PS3 exploit team and their really awesome efforts. For a while, there was nothing possible on the super slim PS3, and even when we had some modifications there, it was not nearly as refined as PS3HEN. So really, they made the impossible possible. On top of that, being able to jailbreak right through the web browser was not possible until several years ago, again, thanks to the efforts of the PS3 exploit team. If you got any good value out of their tools, applications, and updates, I would always recommend giving them a donation here. It helps you out, it helps out the community, and it helps out the team. Their link will be down below in the description, and you can check out and see where you can donate to them. But a big thank you and shout out goes out to them for their continued efforts on the PS3. Anyways, that is about it for this video here. Hopefully it helped you all out, and if it did, a like would absolutely be appreciated. If you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well too. But as I always say, this is Mr. Mario, signing off. Thank you all for watching, everyone.